Hi, I'm Susan Cloke. I am the Data Intelligence Manager within Business and Digital Solutions in North Lanarkshire Council. I'm here today to talk about the development and delivery of the Business Intelligence Hub in the Council, which will be a key tool in developing our data insights and decision making. I'm here today with Ben Scully. Ben, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Susan. My name's Ben and I work for Agilisys, and I'm the project manager for the BI Hub Phase 2 work that's currently ongoing.
Great, thanks. So, through this presentation, I think we want to share with you a practical example of how modern data strategy can lead to significant process and service quality improvements. So we hope to walk you through the steps in terms of our development and delivery of our Business Intelligence Hub, how we took that from a kind of proof of concept through to where we are just now, how we developed the business case and the implementation around that hub. And through that process to share with you some of the kind of lessons that we've learned and some of the recommendations we would make around data insights and success moving forward. I think, though, it's crucial first that I kind of set the background to this and set some context for it. So North Lanarkshire Council itself is currently partway through, we're actually in year 2 of a significant digital transformation journey. It's called Digital NL, as you'll see on the slide. And you'll see that it touches on all areas of our community and organisation, from our major digital connectivity programme, website transformation, development of the new CRM using Dynamics, our customer services hub, and our rollout of Office 365 and Teams and remote working. And that's just to name a few of the things that are going on just now. But part of the digital NL scope is around analysis and insights, and it's about using data to drive effective decision making. And this will be delivered through the development and the delivery of a business intelligence hub function. So that business intelligence hub will include automated information extraction, it'll include transfer into a data warehouse or a data lake, it'll include standard Power BI reporting. But more importantly for us, and for us as a North Lanarkshire Council as an organisation, it's about us having that ability to access data intelligence across the whole organisation, to share and shape it across that whole organisation, and to use it then to inform decision making across the organisation. So in terms of basic, what did that actually mean for us? Well, it meant that we currently have largely reactive reporting. Our processes tend to be in silos, so we've got different service areas, we've got different committee reports. Our organisation tends to be, I suppose, vertical rather than horizontal. We've got multiple versions of information and truth across the organisation. We've got a very, very heavy reliance on pre-built and static reports, so we've got templates for our committee reports, etc. And we don't use data effectively as a tool for us to get any form of insight to inform our decision making moving forward. I suppose also our reports tend to be historic in nature. They've not got insight, never mind foresight, and we've got limited metrics available. So our current data sets lack breadth and depth, and we're delivering only a partial view of our performance for the whole organisation. And the purpose of the hub and the delivery of the wider data and information strategic roadmap is to move us to that stage 5 in the process. And what we hope for by the time we get to stage 5 is that what we see is data management and results used across the organisation between services. We've got that single view, that single source of truth within the organisation. You know, we are using all of that information to constantly improve, to adapt and to change our business needs. And we've got really high quality data management processes in place. Now, the hub itself, wherever possible, will draw from line of business systems, and we will automate that as far as is practicable. And then we'll use that to then drive the predictive analysis and to drive forward that business improvement moving forward. And the key tooling to us to achieve all of this is obviously the Business Intelligence Hub. So what's our vision? What's our vision for that Business Intelligence Hub? So the Business Intelligence Hub will sit at the centre of the organisation. And the direction for that hub and its development will come from the Data Governance Board and supported by our data management team. And it's their role, using our plan for North Lanarkshire, which is our high-level strategic document, to identify all of the strategic drivers and business outcomes, what it is that we want to achieve as an organisation moving forward. So the Business Intelligence Hub itself will then create insights to report on performance and progress and identify areas for improvement to make sure we're achieving what we set as those targets and outcomes moving forward. This in turn will inform service managers, SMT, that's our senior management teams, CMTs, our corporate management team, together with committee and elected members. And that data will come from a range of sources, including our existing and actually our new line of business systems, because as part of the wider digital programme, we're replacing our line of business systems, but also eventually from external sources, such as the Improvement Service, SEPA, or wider Scottish Government. And we're currently in discussions with Improvement Service and Digital Office for Scottish Local Authorities around some of this work. So this would then support us in benchmarking, comparative analysis, and I suppose our intention is to look to be drawing that data direct from our line of business systems as far as is practicable. And this will free up our staff time. This will free up our staff time to start to do more of a role around analysis, more of a role around insights, more of a role to ask those kind of probing questions that we haven't really had the time to do just now. And I suppose then it's that move, as I said previously, from hindsight to foresight, and then hopefully moving onwards towards predictive analysis. I suppose it's also about being able to see data as that single resource that's shared across the organisation to inform our decision making moving forward. So, how are we getting on? So this slide shows you where we are, I suppose, on that journey. But before I talk about that, I think it's probably important to outline what the kind of key objectives were for us. And I've said some of them in the previous slide, but for us, it was about reducing the volume and the complexity of our current report and achieving that shift away from hindsight to foresight. But more importantly, it was to use all of that to support our strategic vision moving forward. So how are we getting on? I suppose what I would say is the proof of concept for the Business Intelligence Hub, that took place between June and August of last year. And as part of that process, what we did was we developed a service BI hub for part of our housing solutions team. And what that allowed us to do was to take some of their existing spreadsheets, which they came out of our housing management system, which they did a lot of manipulation with before it actually moved into a point where it could be reported on. So we took all of that data and information, we input it into Power BI, and we presented them with a dashboard which they could interrogate, which they could work through, where they could see the advantages of using Power BI. And that was kind of our proof of concept around the use of Power BI as a tool. We also scoped out our strategic performance framework requirements. We've got a strategic performance framework across the organisation. It's at 3 levels. The first level is our high level externally managed information. We draw a lot of that from external agencies such as Improvement Service. And I suppose we started to scope some of this out. And what that led us to think about was actually what we needed for the Business Intelligence Hub was also a link externally, a link for us to be able to draw data into the system and not just for us to have the ability to move it out or move it around the organisation as moving forward. We also looked at the development of a high-level roadmap for that whole strategic technology solution for the hub, and that would underpin the service and the core hubs moving forward. So we started to look at what that model would look like, and we started to look at what those licensing requirements would be. And I suppose what that proved to us, if you like, from that proof of concept, it did confirm for us that we wanted to use Power BI as our key reporting tool. It did actually also illustrate for us that we could have significant time reduction, even if we weren't directly connecting to line of business systems at the moment. Even our use of Excel spreadsheets, even our use of just using Power BI was giving us significant time reductions in terms of staff time. We also then developed a template for flexible reporting, so it showed the service where they could go in and interrogate the data that they had and where they could start to think about the other questions. And I suppose that's that whole thing about considering additional data and insight. It's about thinking about the other questions that you wanted to ask in relation to that data, but probably they had never had the time to do that. As I said previously, it also identified some of our external opportunities moving forward, but what it did articulate for us was that we needed a roadmap for this development moving forward, and we needed to see where it sat with the other key components within the digital NL programme. So how did it link to the customer services hub? How did it link to our whole range of sprints that we already had underway? And that led us into phase 2, which is where we are now. So that Business Intelligence Hub next steps. We're currently in phase 2, which will last from now until June of this year moving forward. And what we did was we took all of our learning from the proof of concept, we prepared a report for our digital NL delivery board, and we scoped out what that phase 2 would look like. So we've now looked at developing a target operating model. We've actually just had our high and low level design approved by our TDA, our Technical Design Authority. What we also have identified is clear links with our geographic information systems team and also clear links with our data management team. These things have to work in parallel and together. We've identified the programme phases and who our early adopters would be. It's always better to go with volunteers than conscripts, I think. And certainly in relation, we've also linked into our service sprints and to our customer service hub development to make sure we've got that synergy across the programme moving forward. And from an external perspective, we've also looked at the development of our conceptual model and how it sits with COVID dashboard and the local government data portal development moving forward. So, how will the BI Hub be organised? The BI Hub itself will have a core hub function, and this is focused on corporate level reporting and performance reporting. And it will also have responsibility for developing the dashboards and reports and setting the direction. So it's a kind of hub and spoke model that we're developing moving forward. There's also a service hub function, and this will be focused on service level reporting within each of the service areas and a bit insight gathering within those particular service areas. There also will be the single reporting tool, so that single council-wide reporting tool, and that will be used to produce reports both at a corporate level and at a service level, and that's Power BI. That's what we've identified as the tool for using for this. We'll also create a single data warehouse, and we're also creating a data lake to go with it, and that's where we will store the data that's extracted from the line of business systems, and we'll use it within that environment to create and share reports across the council moving forward. We'll also have standardised processes and reports, and these will be governed by the core hub, which resides within Business Solutions, which is my team within the Chief Executive's office. So this central team will ensure services meet the requirements in terms of appropriate reporting standards as we move through the development of the hub. We'll also have timely data feed, and that means that data will be drawn down from sources on a regular basis to ensure its currency. It won't be live feed, operational data, and Ben will talk about that in a minute, but we will extract data from line of business systems to use for that purpose. In terms of data filtering, this will enable services to view data, to search data, and support some of our locality planning so we can cut it by geography, etc., moving forward. And the final part of it is around analysis of feedback, and this includes feedback from our customer services hub and from staff and from other organisations, and it's drawing that into the hub and using that as part of this overall analysis. So I'll now hand you over to Ben, who will take you through how the hub will work, as it stands at the moment.
Brilliant. Thanks, Susan. So hopefully people will be rightly excited by the opportunities that something like the BI Hub can provide. But at the same time, I can appreciate that feeling of caution and, how are we actually going to do this in practice? Or we've heard this all before and yet we are where we are. And I suppose what I would say to that is just the really positive benefits of the tangible benefits of what we've seen just from the proof of concept work that we've done so far. And that, as Susan has said, that's really focusing on maximising the value of Power BI and reducing that copy and pasting across different systems and manual data entry that just keeps that report exercise ticking over, but isn't necessarily creating those real insights that improve your decision making. And this diagram here really provides a view of what that full solution will look like in the fullness of time, where we're currently deploying at the moment, and it really removes that manual legwork altogether. But at the same time, I can appreciate that this probably looks a little bit more complicated than some people might feel comfortable with dealing with. But actually, the benefit of this approach that we're taking is the use of Microsoft Synapse. And really, it simplifies a lot of that heavy lifting with regard to the data management and the pipelines. And so really, all this diagram is showing us is how the data flows from that source system all the way through towards that decision maker at the end. So starting with the data sources, I imagine NLC's starting position isn't too dissimilar to many of yourselves. It's the same old things that we're constantly hearing around disparate data sources and legacy systems and sort of differing data standards across departments. And these are challenges that realistically are going to go away. And that's despite work that's already gone on through digital NL to date. And Susan referred to it earlier. One of our key principles around extracting this data is only taking the data that we need to make those decisions, because ultimately we're paying for the storage and the processing power to manage all of the data that will sit in the BI hub. And so we have to be smart around what we're actually bringing in. So only something that will feed a report, contribute to a decision, and actually push the council forward in terms of its insight and its operational outcomes through better tactical decision making. That's the real opportunity here, to not just take what we have already, but actually to take it that much step further and actually say, what is it that you need to improve? So we've extracted the data from the source systems. Now we're going to transform it to turn it into useful, comparable data, and then loading it into the right tables around which you can analyze it. And Synapse is really the key tool here. If you look, the 4 components of ingest and prepare and train, the data warehouse and serve, all of those functions are provided by Synapse, whereas before they'd have been provided by products such as Databricks or Data Factory, which are all deployed separately, have to be joined together, and can be quite resource intensive in terms of those expensive resources like data engineers. And so this low code and far more visual approach to doing things, simple enough for even me to follow, which is particularly impressive if you know anything about me. But in terms of what it actually means from a practical perspective for people are going to be using this and using the insights it provides, essentially it means that the hundreds, if not thousands of hours that we're currently spending across local authorities creating reports can be automated. If it's re-entering data from an extracted PDF or copying and pasting across various different systems, or even relying on that complicated Excel worksheet which is sat in a shared drive and praying that it won't corrupt. Instead, we just automate the process with pointing a pipeline at a particular data source or a line of business system, telling it how often we want it to refresh, how it might need to change to make sure that it's comparable with all of the other data. And that is how we're creating that single view that Susan mentioned and that I think all councils are aiming for. Now, when you look at things such as the data lake and the machine learning service, I think most excitingly, they're great for future-proofing what we're trying to achieve here. The data lake can be used to hold things like unstructured data, so a PDF or an invoice or something like that. And the machine learning capabilities can then turn that into something that can then be analyzed, which first of all reduces any need for manual data entry from a lot of legacy records that I know most councils are dealing with. But it also provides that backbone for you to then start doing more interesting things with data that you didn't have to hand before. And that, in particular, that machine learning and the shift to predictive analytics in the future is going to be really exciting, and probably where a lot of the benefits and the ambitions that we're talking around being data-led will really come to the fore. But as we sort of mentioned already, it's as we get to that BI insights function and the reports that are generated from it that we can really see the benefit of what we're trying to do beyond the sort of the simple process for building these reports and churning them out, and moving instead towards that insight and actual service improvement perspective, which really is the thing that needs to improve if we're to become a little bit more evidence-led in our decision making. So how does it actually look? I mean, hopefully you can see straight away how much easier it is to gain insight from data between these two examples. Plenty of organisations are still using Excel tables, perhaps with a bit of conditional formatting, or a few graphs that are produced by the Excel wizard. And admittedly, they've served us for a long time, and the simplicity has been incredibly helpful. But Power BI off the cuff just provides that much clearer standardized dashboard. The automatic updates are almost the icing on the cake, but they're designed specifically for each decision that a service and decision maker might be making, to identify the common outliers that you're expecting to find and give you the tools to investigate them further. And really, this is made most easy and most impactful through the interactive nature of a Power BI dashboard. And it's certainly its most important features, because it means that a decision maker that sees something isn't quite right is able to delve into the detail and feed their curiosity a little bit more. And by understanding sort of what makes up the data and being able to interrogate it in this way, you can actually make decisions sort of there and on the fly, rather than having to then request another graph or another report be made to investigate whatever that outlier might have been. So just as a sort of an example of how this interactive feature works, you can see on here we are dealing with a group of contractors, but all of the data can automatically change as soon as you click on a contractor's name. Graphs will update, and the various data items will as well, which allow you to just get that total system view without having to click across, what can sometimes be hundreds of pages of PDF of PowerPoint presentations, trying to find that right graph that tells you exactly what you're trying to do. Similarly, if you're looking at something like benchmarks, you can use a filter to change who you're comparing yourself with based on either the service area, the audience you're reporting to, or the performance level that you have, so that you can see who your statistical neighbors are. And then perhaps my favorite function for Power BI is around the map capabilities, which allow you to view things as a total authority view, but then progressively click down and delve into the detail at, be it a ward level or even street and postcode, providing you've got that underlying data that sits there. But actually, I think what strikes me most about Power BI and sort of the benefits of it is how quickly people see the value of it. It's getting something in their hands to play with, and this proof of concept was a perfect example where it really captures the imagination and people start to see how they could apply it elsewhere. And it's that cultural shift that actually is the key to making the kind of investments that we're making in technology these days actually realize the benefits that we're promising. Because if people aren't using it to its fullest, then it'll just be the same thing that we do again and again, where we'll invest in a great solution with near limitless possibilities, but then only use the most easy functions to make it work. So in terms of making it easier, I think we've touched on many of these already, but there are definitely a few that are worth drawing out. And I think most importantly, perhaps, is around that reduction in manual actions. I think the proof of concept alone saw 80% improvements, where 22 individual manual processes were being required to create these reports. And just using Power BI to do much of the heavy lifting, we've taken that down to 4. And that's without the Synapse solution at all. And this means, as Susan's already said, that analysts have got far more time to actually interpret the data and properly brief their managers on areas that might need a little bit more investigation, and then have done that investigation themselves, because they're no longer spending all of their time doing these manual processes, putting things together. Also, once the data is there, you can cut it however you want. And this is where duplication is really starting to be addressed from the Synapse system. The same data that feeds a service level report can also automatically update that top level board report at the same time with no additional effort whatsoever. And I think you can imagine now how you will have a report at a service level, a report at a board level. They'll be drawing the same information from the same systems and probably developing very similar reports. But without that joined up approach to things, it's just missing much of the benefits of technology. Whereas with this new approach here, there's no more manual process required to manage the data. Also, in terms of collaboration, the online workspaces have proved to be really helpful in terms of sharing knowledge and sort of troubleshooting problems across teams. And it's definitely been made simpler by the wider investments made on the digital platform. But actually, Power BI, the online community, is so vast that it means that questions around troubleshooting, or even brand new modular ways to visualize data, are all completely at the click of a button. And they've often been asked those questions before, and the answers provided in really great detail. And so being able to use that means that rather than depending on the skills of a certain individual within an organization, you can definitely grow while the rest of the community does as well. And then finally, on the security point, I think this is something that particularly bears talking about, which is with an Excel spreadsheet, as soon as that Excel spreadsheet has left control of the council or has been shared, control over that is completely lost. The benefit of this is that data never has to leave the secure environment that you've created for it. You can integrate it with things like Azure Active Directory to make sure that concerns around GDPR or Cambridge Analytica are completely dealt with. And it's becomes far simpler for your data protection officers to deal with things from a reporting aspect. And really, that's just what we're doing now. In the future, we'll almost certainly be looking at how we can embed decision making within these dashboards themselves. The benefits of Power Apps and Power Automate, to click a button, start off a workflow, just as a result of seeing something in a report, is going to be incredibly helpful for managing large teams. And similarly, with predictive analytics and scenario modeling and artificial intelligence, there's going to be plenty of room for a solution such as the BI Hub to grow further. But I'll pass you back to Susan now to take us to the end.
Thanks, Ben. I suppose I kind of spoke earlier about the kind of development of our conceptual model and the links to external data. And I don't know if some of you will be aware of this, but there are ongoing discussions in relation to the Improvement Service and the Digital Office for Scottish Local Authorities about the development of a local government data portal. And we've been involved in these and presented our thinking on what we think the future could look like using the Business Intelligence Hub and using all the tools that Ben just spoke about. And I suppose our conceptual model was showing a sort of stepped progression through the development of a hub for us, then the development of a hub for local government, and then possibly in parallel, the development of some version of the same type of hub for Scottish Government and its linked to agencies, so police, fire, health, etc., moving forward. But I suppose this slide interprets our ultimate ambition for what we see as the ultimate end game in relation to a business intelligence hub and that business intelligence function across the public sector. So that's for a single public sector hub, which all public sector data would flow through, and where every partner would have access to it. Now, that's a future dream. That's something but that's what we're aiming for. That's where we want to put that marker down just now. That's where we want to start to have those discussions, to start to say, we're working within North Lanarkshire Council on a business intelligence hub. We're quite happy to have an interface, either with a local government portal to start with, but then moving further forward to say, Scotland's a pretty small country. There is no reason why, with the proper rules and governance in place, that we can't look at sharing this data much wider, that we can't look at being able to do, probably what we aspired to do almost at the start of COVID. And COVID has pointed out some of the limitations of our current systems and processes just now. We didn't have that ability to share data quickly. We didn't have that ability to be certain that it was robust. We've been working a bit on a wing in a prayer, if we're being brutally honest about it. But certainly what we see is the future of this BI hub function, and using, Power BI, using Synapse, using all of the tools that we have to do that, is to look at the creation of a Scottish entity that would help us and support us in sharing that data and information much wider across local authorities and other bodies. So what is it that we've learned to date? And I think, being brutally honest about this, we're at the start of a 5-year programme. We're only into phase 2 of this. But, we thought it would be really useful to share with you some of the learning that we've, that we've had around this. And I suppose the first thing moving forward was about that whole issue about taking time to plan this. And that might seem, a statement where you're going, well, that would be obvious, wouldn't it? But I think from our perspective, what we're saying, it's crucial that we've been approaching the development of the Business Intelligence Hub in that bite-sized pieces way. We've deliberately resisted the pressure to move too quickly. But most of all, what we've also done is been able to try and be flexible as we move through this whole process. We know we've had to adapt. We've had to adapt already in relation to changes to the sprints and where they linked with the Business Intelligence Hub moving forward, and how that linked to service redesign. And I suppose it's crucial to say that flexibility needs to remain while we adapt to changes within the wider IT programme as we move through the phases of the Digital NL programme across the whole of the council moving forward. Designing the solution alongside users, again, one that seems self-evident, but it's crucial. You need to grow with the users and the managers. They need to know and understand the systems that are being put in place. We need time, all of us need time to build the skills and the knowledge that are required to develop the hub and take forward the development of that hub. Agilisys won't be with us forever. And we as a council, we need to be able to develop and manage the system and the processes to take control to develop the system as we move forward. One of the big things for me is about culture change, I think. And Ben mentioned this earlier as well. The BI Hub can't be seen in isolation. It's part of a wider culture change within the organisation, within the council as a whole. And maybe I think you've started to pick up some of that from the presentation as we've gone through it. But the development of the Business Intelligence Hub is intrinsically linked to the delivery of our data and information strategic roadmap. And that looks at the development of these linked BI Hub linked roles across the organisation. So the development of roles such as data owners, data architects and data stewards, all of that being governed by the Data Governance Board and the data management team, a custodian model within wider IT delivery. But that culture change is crucial. You need to bring people along with you. They need to understand the concept and they need to feel comfortable with those concepts moving forward. We're a huge organisation. We have massive cross-service dependencies. Data doesn't sit in isolation. Whether that be from HR and finance into service delivery, whether that be from social work to housing, whether that be from our education into our children and family social work delivery, across the whole organisation, there are clear dependencies in relation to data. And we need to, we've come across that already through the example of some of the sprints where we've got environmental assets work that links to our fleet services work. And through all of that, that data needs to connect through into our strategic performance framework. So we need to recognise and we need to articulate those relationships and interdependencies within the hub itself. They need to be clearly understood as you go through that planning process and as you go through the development process for the hub itself. I've talked quite a lot about data maturity. And I've mentioned, if you are starting from a low starting point as we were, then this process is not just about tech and automation. As I spoke earlier, it's about changing how we recognise and how we manage data across the organisation. But more crucially, how do we use that data to inform our decision making? And it's crucial for the Business Intelligence Hub success that it's linked into that change in data and information governance, the roadmap that I spoke about earlier on. And going through that process, we are going through that process to overhaul all our data and information governance. So this is a parallel stream which will also be crucial to and support the development of the Business Intelligence Hub moving forward. And I suppose the last thing is about being honest and transparent. What I've put on this slide is it may get worse before it gets better. And I think that's just a recognition about being prepared for what it is that you may uncover as you go through these processes. So these processes which will support services to recognise existing system failure or data failure, to recognise where they currently have workarounds and to help them with that process. We know we'll uncover some uncomfortable truths. At the moment, we're in a situation where we're just about to link into our housing management system, and we have, I suppose some of us have real fears that the data we uncover will not be of the best quality, but actually that's the process that we need to go through. We need to uncover some of these uncomfortable truths. And it's not about blame, it's about a recognition about where we can start to make those improvements and how, Microsoft's tools, how they can support us to do and change these processes. And most of all, it's about being honest and it's about being transparent and it's about having those honest discussions. Ben, I don't know if there's anything else you would want to add in at this point.
I think you've said it quite perfectly, actually, Susan. I think the most important thing with understanding sort of the lessons learned is that everyone's going to move at different paces, and you just have to be flexible enough to accept that. Move together, obviously, as one whole, but appreciate that some services might be able to push towards some of those things like predictive analytics sooner than others. And the only other thing is to always just be focused on what is the decision that we're trying to make with this data, because from a BI Hub perspective, you don't need to worry about the data, you don't need to worry about the quality of it, you don't need to worry about where it comes from if you're not actually going to use it to make a decision.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think that's crucial. And as I've said earlier, I think this is about informing our strategic decision making. This is about us understanding whether or not we are reaching those ambitions that we've articulated in our plan for North Lanarkshire. Well, we've come to the end, and I would just like to thank Ben for being involved in this presentation as well. I hope you found it informative. Thank you.